Got it. All right. Welcome to our coaching chat Zoom, you guys. I am excited just to continue on what we've been talking about. And let me get us all squared away here. We're talking about this book, Seven Secrets to Selling More by Selling Less. And I think it's very appropriate, especially for our world of Juice Plus, because a lot of times, if you guys know, when you bring someone new into our community, onto your team, one of the first things they say is, oh my gosh, I don't want anyone thinking that I'm selling them something, and here comes the selling person. And you know, this book, now that I'm like 3 chapters in, that is exactly what this book keeps dealing with. And that is, how do we show up in a way that doesn't come across what everyone seems to be fearful of, is coming across like you're selling something. And so if you remember back 3 weeks ago, secret number 1 was we need to have that mental mind shift of thinking about ourselves. What am I saying? What do people think about me? And make that shift to focus on them. What do they need? What will make sense to them? And that shift alone begins that process of getting us out of that mindset of selling and thinking we're selling, to the point that we are focused on that customer. Then the second week, we talked about that second secret is you need to switch your mindset from helping, not selling. Same thing, going down that path of getting off ourselves and thinking about, oh my goodness, I don't want to be a salesperson. But when we make that mental shift that we truly are helping people, what it's going to do is it's going to force us to start asking those questions, digging deep, and really finding out, how can we help these people? We're not in a business of one-time sales, where we make a lot of money. What's more important is that we develop that relationship with people. We find out, what do they need and how can I help them get it? And that's going to change that feeling within us from feeling like being a salesperson to really being somebody who is a resource that people know, ooh, I need information on. Karen, I'm seeing your face, so you're going to get picked on today. But I just think about Karen. Karen, people know. I know how much you really communicate and lock arms with people to really try to help them, because you had Juice Plus played such an amazing role in your health that I guarantee you, people don't look at you as coming after them on selling, because you really have a heart to help. And so I think we personally need to make sure we've made that mind shift, as well as really help our team do that, and especially the new people that come on our team, because we all kind of had to go through that process usually. Today, I'm excited about this topic because I had a good time reading about it. So today, it's making that shift. So it's secret number 3, making that shift from being unaware to truly being aware and tuned in to people's body language. And so as I started reading this, I was like, wow, this is a lot of stuff. I think a lot of us maybe, we all have a certain amount of EQ that we can read people's emotions, but getting better at this is only going to make us better. We're going to feel like we're selling less, yet actually sell more, because we're really getting even more in tune with people's body language. So first of all, we all are communicating nonverbally, whether we're aware of it or not. And I think a lot about when I'm talking to somebody and watching their nonverbal cues, but sometimes I forget that I'm throwing off nonverbal cues also. And maybe I think as I read this book, thought, okay, I need to pay attention of how I'm coming across and what's truly going on in my mind, which kind of brings back to, if we're hung up on feeling like we're selling, then even we may not say it, or if we feel like Juice Plus is too expensive, whatever our hangups are, we're throwing that off non-verbally, whether we know it or not. And so we need to make sure that we're kind of going through in our head, what are those hangups that I personally have that I haven't worked through and grown personally to get beyond that? Because I might not be saying anything, but what I'm throwing off to people non-verbally could be communicating something different. So I got to read you just a quick little part in this book that I think will give you just a really good visual on this. We all are communicating nonverbally. It says a blatant and strong nonverbal signal from a customer that goes unnoticed is akin to that customer throwing a rock and hitting the salesperson in the forehead at point blank range. But the salesperson never notices or flinches from the blow. What the customer now sees subconsciously is a salesperson standing in front of him with the big smile, spewing his facts and figures, all the while there is blood pouring down his face. And have you guys think about it for a minute that very thing has happened? And I remember specifically having a conversation. Someone was wanting me to buy something, and I literally was trying to communicate nonverbally because this person was spewing out facts and information. I truly was trying to communicate with my facial expression how disgusted I was at the manner in which they were approaching me. They just kept on going, didn't even acknowledge it. And that, not only were they, it was kind of a verbal assault with the way they were just, wasn't even coming up for a breath, but also the fact that they totally ignored what I know they had to have seen was my facial expression. And so when we think about having these exchanges with people, what's going on inside our mind? So this guy was all about getting her presentation out to me. When in reality, I was like, if you take just a little bit of time and ask me questions, and I remember she finally came up for air and said, would you have any questions? And I literally said, I've had about 50 questions, but I haven't had a chance to even share any of them. And she was almost like taken aback, but it was kind of like I wanted her to know, man, you're annoying. I don't want to buy anything from you. And so that was kind of a lesson to help me as an extrovert think, am I doing that with people? And really paying attention. And there's times when I see myself doing it and I see it on the look of someone's face. And instantly I'm just like, okay, I need to just pull back. They're not interested. We need to go into a direction they want to talk about. And sometimes it's literally, we got to table what we're saying if we're getting anything like that. So we are communicating nonverbally, whether we're aware of it or not. Number two, nonverbal communication is typically pretty accurate because most people aren't thinking about what's going on in their face. And we're going to get into different things we're seeing and what those mean. So when you see that, that's typically pretty accurate. What you're seeing is going to tell you something. Number three, we pick up on nonverbal communication subconsciously. So how about you're watching somebody from a distance? And has this ever happened that the more you watch them, the more annoyed you get? And it's almost like maybe you've not even met them, but you've already formed your opinion of them. Am I the only one that will let that happen? I'm embarrassed to say, but it does. But then when they actually come over to you and you start talking, you kind of get a whole nother perspective on who they are. And really, once you get to know them, it kind of changes. But that some of that initial nonverbal communication can set the pace and almost throw up a guard with somebody before you have an opportunity for them to really get to know you. So when I read that, I thought, am I doing that with people? And if so, what do I need to change? What do I need to tweak that people are subconsciously picking up? Number four, what are you communicating verbally? And then number five, what are they communicating non-verbally? I think I'm more apt to be watching what somebody else is non-verbally communicating before I'm thinking about what I'm non-verbally communicating. But they're both powerful, and we got to get good at being able to pay attention. And I think for us personally, it's making sure our mindsets are correct, getting rid of, now who is it says stinking thinking? Make sure we get all the stinking thinking out, because it's coming out in our nonverbal communication if we don't. And then when it comes to other people, really tuning in and paying attention to their nonverbal communication. Okay, so I barely could get all of this. I didn't get all of it on the screen. So there's a lot of information here. So we're going to go through it quickly, but I thought it was fabulous, and I couldn't, I want to post this so you guys can have it. So that's why I kind of got it all crammed on one page. But so he talks about 3 ways that we want to pay attention to people's body language. So their facial expression, their hands and arms, and then their feet, legs, and torso. So he kind of said the facial expressions more kind of what's coming back to you is in regard to your message. The arms and the hands are kind of like punctuation. I talk a lot with my hands and my arms. So that's kind of putting a punctuation on the message. And then the feet, the legs, and the torso are areas that that really kind of communicate their emotions that you're really not thinking. You may give someone a smile, but that smile could be, you could be giving someone a smile that truly isn't a true smile. And I thought it was cool. One of the things it said, when you see someone smile, if the ends of their mouth goes up toward their eyes, that's a true smile. But if you kind of get this, where it kind of just goes back, it's a forced smile that's not a real smile. But it said, when it comes to your legs and feet, what goes on with that, nobody's paying attention to that. But if you are, it's going to indicate something. So we'll get to that. So he talked about pursed lips, which is discomfort or frustration. You know, you think about people who kind of give you that look. As you start reading these, people come to mind, don't they? A happy smile or a smile typically means, if it's not a forced smile, people are happy, they're content, they're excited. How about squinting eyes, which kind of represents anger or frustration? A burrowed frown, someone's kind of confused. That one's a really good one to be on the lookout for, because sometimes I'll get talking really fast, and I'm going to switch this over to an email. I got an email from someone who was wanting something from me, but they jumped in midstream. I don't even know what their business was, but they were wanting something from me. And I can only imagine if I were watching myself read that email, my face, my forehead, I'm sure had that burrowed look to it, because it was confusing. I'm like, you're asking something from me and I don't even know what you're talking about. And sometimes I think, as extroverts, at least I do, I get so excited that I forget what I know that possibly they don't know, and I jump in midstream. So if you're getting that, that's a sign, okay, back up and start a little slower to really try to communicate what in a way that they can understand and track with me. Lowering of the eyebrows, that's kind of a questioning, agitated look. Or how about the side glance? That's something we want to really pay attention to, because what's that communicating? Mistrust or suspicion or disapproval. If they kind of look to the side like that, then that's a signal. You know what? I need to back up and reestablish rapport with this person. They're not believing what I'm saying. How about this was a new one for me, touching the nose. Something negative has just happened. And you know, I can do that sometimes. I know myself doing that. Like if I know my face is kind of representing something I don't want them to see, like I'll do that. And when I read that, I'm like, I do that sometimes. Touching the neck, deep trouble, or something's messed up. A raised eyebrow. They like you and what you're saying. So that's what we want to go for, is the raised eyebrow. Brenda and I went to Uganda several years ago, and there's something about the Ugandans that do this. They look at you and they go, hey, like that. They raise their eyebrows. It's so cute. But, you know, and they did it a lot to us. And yet looking back on that, I think, you know, that's a really encouraging sign from somebody, that they like you and they like what you have to say. A tilt head, they're interested. You've got their attention. You know, so if we're talking and we're not getting some of these cues, then we probably need to kind of pull back a bit and think about, did I really get them to the point that I can share what I want to share? Maybe I didn't ask enough questions to really find what would interest them, what would draw them in, what emotionally could I connect with? And then about the big eyes. You know, sometimes too, when we have these facial, like if I'm talking to you like this and I'm excited, then what a lot of times is people will automatically mirror back what you're doing. So if I'm approaching somebody kind of, yeah, I've been taking juice class for about 20 years now, and you know, I'm probably going to get back a lot of that same. But if I want someone to be excited, I got to be excited. If I want someone to be interested, I need to be interesting and find out what they're interested in. So work on our own facial expressions in hopes that that's one way to draw people in and get them on the same page non-verbally with us as well. Arms and hands. So across arms usually means protection or nervous or uncomfortable. You know, paying attention to that. Clenched hands, they're holding back a negative reaction. You know, it's kind of hard on, as much as we do on Zoom, to see some of these things, but especially when we're in person, to be looking for this. Right now, we probably got to do a lot of watching from a facial standpoint. Hands behind the back means that they're confident with you, or maybe even are showing some superiority, that may indicate some things. And seeing those things, not being afraid to kind of ask questions when we see these things come up. Or, oh my goodness, it went into the topic of handshake. So I know we're in a little bit more of a little more relational type business than that we would necessarily start with a handshake. But I thought these were so pretty potent things. So have you ever shook someone's hand and that when they got your hand, they turned it so their hand was on top? Think about how that felt. Well, and I thought about that, and I've been in that position, and I remember that feeling coming back. It's not a good feeling. It's a sign of someone wanting to have dominance over you. Then it talked about if somebody, and I've had this happen, when they shake your hands, they take both their hands and put it around your hand. Anybody have that happened? And that's a weird feeling too. And it said to never do that. That's a very close relational type feeling. And if you have someone who hasn't earned that relationship, it gives you a weird feeling. They talked about just an equal strong handshake is definitely what you want to aim for. But there was one more thing it talked about, and I wanted to read this to you. And I've had this happen, and I remember the feeling when I had this happen. It is the feeling, it's the handshake if someone goes in with their right hand to shake your hand. They take their left hand and put it on your elbow. And I want you to read, and I've had that happen, and I remembered it how I felt, but I couldn't remember where it happened to me. And then it dawned on me, but I'm going to read what it says when someone does that to you. It says, upon meeting someone for the first time, if you briefly touch a person's elbow with your left hand while shaking their right hand, it has been determined that you are 3 times more likely to sell your product or service. That was like, wow. And a couple of thoughts on that. Number one is I remembered finally when I had that happen, and was actually at my dad's funeral, and it was one of the guys who knew my dad. He ran the funeral home, and he came up to me and he did that. And I just remember it was very hard. I really felt a sense of sincerity from this guy. And he told me how much he loved my dad. And it was that one act of almost like, it's going to be okay. And wild that thought has never crossed my mind what he did, but it came flooding back to me when I read that. I'm going to give you another situation that the other night I walked into a room of friends of mine who I do a Bible study with, and I was late, and they knew I was going to be late, and they were in the biggest heated argument. And these are dear friends of like 10 years. And of course it was political. And I was like, whoa, I'm going to go back out to my car, and I'm going to sit in my car for another 10 or 15 minutes. But I just kind of stood back kind of into the entrance to this huge debate going on. And finally, I saw one of my friends walk up to one of the girls who was really heated. And I saw her touch her arm kind of in that same area right here. And she looked her in the eye and she said, I absolutely love you and value you as a friend. And I say we just agree to disagree, and we need to drop this conversation. And instantly, the room, it was just like a settling peace went over the room. And again, as I was reading this book, that brought that memory back. There's something about, and granted we're in COVID now, but simply touching somebody on the arm or shoulder brings about, I think, sincerity or care, concern. And so when I was reading that whole area just really stuck out to me, that what we're about is really building and developing relationships. And relationships, I think of the 5 love languages. How do we communicate love? It's through our words. It's through that, a physical touch like that. It's through gift giving. If you've ever read that book, that we're not about just making a one-time sale. We're truly about developing relationships and changing lives. And the better we get at all this, it not being a sales technique, but truly a way to build and grow our relationships with people. And then lastly, the book talks about the feet, the legs, and the torso. Maybe it's talked about moving feet, that sometimes we can think that that's a little bit of someone being nervous, and it could be, but they said for the most part, if somebody's like swinging their leg, moving their feet, they're happy, they're enjoying themselves, they're glad to be with you, they're anticipating more of the conversation. If you're with someone standing up and they cross their legs, it's a sense that they're confident in their relationship with you and they're comfortable. Now, they said sometimes when you're sitting and you're crossing your leg, like you got your ankle over your knee, if you lean back, it almost can be a little bit of, that's not a good thing because you're leaning away from the person. So they said when sitting down, crossing your leg is not, you want to have your legs kind of down and leaning toward people so that they know that you're interested in them, you're caring about them. And then the same thing just with the whole torso, when you're moving forward towards someone, it shows you trust them. And so I just thought, I'm going to stop sharing now. We got 5 minutes, that I feel like that process of us really learning those, and I'm going to post it on Team Extreme Facebook so you guys can grab them and use them. But I feel like the better we get in all areas, not just our verbal communication, but our nonverbal communication really portrays and communicates way more than I think any of us think about, whether it be how we're coming across, as well as really paying attention to how other people what they're saying with their nonverbal communication to us. So anyway, we're going to jump into the planning, but does anyone have a question pertaining to any of this information? Brenda, I want to say you made some comment about you read a book or something along this topic.
I just got it, some kind of post. I've got to go find it. But when we were talking right before the text, and it was all about the power of nonverbal communication, which my immediately thought is there's so much that is even less verbal. I mean, less facial communication with the mask and everything. Like I said, I just flew in from Florida and to Florida, and they were so manic about everybody using their mask, but every time they came by with any kind of identification, we had to pull it up so they could see our face and put it back down. But I was really surprised by several of the things that you said. I think it makes perfect sense. And I've never even thought about touching your face in different places. I think that's really powerful.
Yeah. And I think if we use it, we could really use it to our benefits to know where we need to pull back and say, okay, there's something missing, you know, and saying, I noticed this, or I noticed that. Did I not make sense? Do I need to clarify something? You know, and when you know people really notice things like that, what does that communicate? It communicates care, it communicates concern, it communicates we're not about just selling something. We truly are concerned about people's health, what they're doing, where they're going, what they want, and taking the time to stop and ask a question is very powerful. And that you noticed a change in someone's facial expression, their thoughts. It seems to me like, you know, when you're talking, did I say something that didn't make sense? Do I need to back up and clarify something? I mean, if someone stops midstream and says that, you're like, wow, they really do care about what I'm thinking. So anyway, I know it's a bit frustrating in the environment that we're in these days, but kind of back to what Linda alluded to is look at people's eyes. And I was walking out and somebody looked at me and I could tell by her eyes she was smiling at me. And I, you know, gave her some good eye contact and we were just walking by each other in and out of a restaurant. But I thought, you know, in this time, especially now, those points of connection, even if it is just with our eyes or with the way that we wave or, you know, we lean in or the words that we say, we don't know how bad people are hurting in today's world. There's a lot of hurt. And, you know, I say this a lot, but this business that we're in is bigger than simply selling a product, making some money, but it truly is, we can have an impact on people's lives far greater than we even know. And I think in the world that we're living and the challenges that we're facing, you know, that we are even beyond Juice Plus partners, having customers, bringing on people on our team, but we are known for someone who cares from head to toe, you know, mind to soul. We care for people. And that speaks volume for our brand, our personal brand, and it speaks volume for our Juice Plus brand. And that's what we want to be known to be. So any other thoughts before we start planning?
Well, I also think just in talking last week, doing several Zooms, somebody that had never been on a Zoom before was asking the difference between seeing somebody's real face and seeing their picture. And I mean, because she hadn't, and you know, and I mean, it's so much easier to be able to put your picture up, but she just said, how do you really know if they're there? And I was like, well, yeah. and you know, so I think we have to think about things differently too now in the world of Zoom, you know, with that.
Yeah. Great point. Erin, you also started to say something.
I just also want to make a point too is I had a conversation with someone I was hesitating to call, but I felt like I should call. The bigger the bigger heart is the call to see how she's doing. And soon as she got on the phone, she just spilled off her whole life. And I was like, wow. And my inclination is to fix it. And I tried, and then she indicated to me that that's not what she wanted me to do. She didn't want me to fix it. She wanted me to listen. And then as soon as I heard her response, I backed up and I said, you know what? Let me digress. I hear what you're saying. I'm just here to kind of talk to you to see how everything was. And then she said, Erin, thank you, because that's exactly what I needed you to do, is to listen. And we're the same birthdays. She almost can read my mind and I can read hers. But she really appreciated that I called to see how she was doing and that I gave her the space to talk about what she needed to talk about. And so,
excuse me, go on.
So although we can't see everybody that we want to see, even the mere phone call, she's not one of my customers. I pray that she will be one day, but it's the caring process. And what I understand is no relationship is disposable. You know, we have to cherish every relationship we have and to value who they are. So one day we'll be able to support them in what they need for their health. So that's what I want to say. Great
point. And did y'all notice when she started saying, let me back up and digress, did you feel that kind of come over? You could hear it in her voice and you felt the care. All right, it's 1:03 now, so let's go right into our planning. So grab a piece of paper, your system, your notebook, your Teensy, whatever it is that you need to, that you use your system to plan, and let's plan. And let's take the next 5 minutes to get those 5, 10 names on that list of people you want to connect with, who you want to talk to about becoming your customer. And then I want to make sure you got about 2 to 5 names of people you want to talk to about bringing them on board to your team. So let's go ahead and start now. Take a couple minutes and let's get those names down on paper. And then I'm going to ask you a couple questions when you're done. One thing, take a look at your calendar, because I think that to me is always one of the absolute best places to start your planning process, because that's going to be just a natural, organic conversation you're going to have. So where are you going this week? Who are you seeing? And then out from those names, what are you going to send to that person? Maybe first start with, what do you think that person would perk their interest to Juice Plus or to this business? What's your verbiage going to look like? And then what is it? What have you watched lately that would be something really good to send to them that might resonate with them? As you're making your plan for the week, think about, I tell you where I get a lot of content is on that Recordings Facebook page. There is always some kind of information on there that I can share. And sometimes I may work backwards. I may go there and start looking at what's been posted and names begin to come to mind. So if you're kind of at a loss, like, yeah, I don't know what to send to people, one of the things we want to do is every single week to be somehow, some way developing and growing ourselves, our mind. You know, what are you reading? What are you listening to? What videos are you watching? Because I find almost sometimes working backwards will inspire me. If I'm listening to Dr. Du Bois's new talk,
Listen.
and you're rushing has a, oh,
It's just good.